Hello, denizens of the internet. Welcome once again to my channel. Today we are starting a new segment that we're going to try to do every month called Interviews with a Hackintosher. And once again, my guest is Pietro Caruso, the author of the TINU Installer, and we'll see you in just a few moments after this intro. Hello, welcome back, denizens of the internet. Well, hello, Pietro, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Peter?
Hi. Yeah, Peter and Peter. Isn't that great? So it's buonasera, right? It's evening in Italy.
Yes, in Italy it's evening. It's 9 p.m. And you on the other side of the earth, it's like afternoon or something like that.
Correct. For those of us who believe in a round earth. Anyways, so Pietro, welcome back. Last time we got a terrific amount of fantastic response to the previous video that we did, where we introduced everybody to the TINU installer. So what we want to do in this particular video is cover off you know, the improvements that you've made, because you got a whole bunch of feedback. People tried it, and there were some issues, and you worked on that. And plus, people asked some questions that we want to answer, and plus, we want to move this whole Hackintosh processing forward, because a lot of people wanted to know not just how to make TINU work, but also then what are the next steps. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today, correct?
Yes, we feature some aspects that we haven't had the chance to talk about in the previous one, and we will also address what are your questions, some complaints, and also update you on the new coming features and improvements of my TINU application. The
vast majority of questions were from people who wanted to try to get their portable Hackintosh working, and absolutely not. We are not going to be covering that. So if you do need help on Hackintoshing a portable, first of all, you have to get the right portable, and TINU, not TINU, I mean Pietro, you had, I'm changing your name to TINU, by the way, just so you know.
Yes, but it's better to not do that, because TINU is also a name which means other things, because some country is a name of an injury.
Oh, Chato in Portuguese means lazy person. So every time I meet a Brazilian or a Portuguese person, oh, Paul, do you know what your name means? Yes, I know. Okay, so now we are going to just talk briefly about the portable. Where can people find resources to Hackintosh portables? Because we're not going to talk about it.
Yes, because portable are a really strange machine from an Hackintoshing point of view, because portables aren't as standardized as desktop computers. So what this means is that every manufacturer with almost every model or every lineup did things differently, using different parts with different standards, different technologies, and this creates all sorts of difficulties and problems for Hackintoshing. For example, in almost all the portables nowadays, you'll need some more complicated stuff to get everything to work, and it's also not guaranteed to get everything to work. And you also have to keep in mind that there are more restrictions and limitations with portable Hackintoshing rather than desktop Hackintoshes.
So we'll end it there. And you said there was a fellow countryman in Italy that does portable Hackintoshing, correct?
Yes, it is. He's an admin of the Italian internal Mac section. His nickname is Genjic84. He's a great guy, a great Hackintosh expert for all around the world of Hackintoshing. And he's a great for portables.
And RehabMan too is also a famous and you know, very good portable Hackintosher.
Yes, there are a lot of other very good laptop Hackintosher. He is one of the greatest Hackintosh developers and experts that we have in all around the world.
And I'm sure he's happy to hear about it. So we'll put the links, you know, down below. So
yes, definitely go check that out, and go check the Installing Mac forum for Hackintosh help, because one of the complaints of the last video was where to getting help or guides, and I highly suggest going to Installing Mac which is a great place to find all of those things.
Yep, we all love Insanely Mac, especially when we're in relation to vanilla Hackintoshing. So, tell me about the updates to TINU that you made based on people's feedback trying it. And I should mention that that last video was like phenomenally successful, and it quadrupled your traffic and your...
Yes, almost quintupled my traffic, my overall TINU popularity. And I had a lot of people coming to me and asking questions or giving me feedback and complaints. And I tried to address all of those as I can. And as a result, I ended up making a lot of changes in the version of TINU I was already developing to solve all those issues that users have found. First of all, there were some issues with some of the secondary functionality or some occasional crashes, misplaces, especially a lot of grammar misplaces, because as a non-native English speaker, I do a lot of English errors. So I have to thank especially a guy named Thomas Templeman, which is another developer, which gave me a lot of help improving my UI for the new version, and you will definitely see that.
So we'll have a link to you just have to go to GitHub, right?
Yes, I plan to release it at the beginning of December.
Okay.
And you can always find on GitHub TINU, and also you can find the GitHub profile of Thomas, that wonderful guy that helped me, down in the description. He's a great Mac developer, by the way. And also another major improvement that Mac folks we love is that I've added completely support for macOS Mojave dark mode, because I switched the development after 2 years from using the old Xcode 8.0 to Xcode 10. And so with that, I had the possibility of adding a complete Mojave dark mode support, and TINU looks absolutely great in dark mode. And I've also added some other features. Especially one huge feature is a new, let's call it a subtool, included inside of TINU, which is EFI partition mounter. Because to do some operations with the USB drive after creating the installer, you will need to open the EFI partition. To delete the need of another app, I have added an embedded EFI partition mounter inside of TINU. I worked this summer to create it, and I have to say I spent a lot of time figuring out how to make it as clean and as intuitive as I can, and I am quite happy with the result, and I think you will love it as well. It isn't unlike any other EFI partition mounter tool you have seen. And also, let's talk about some changements, because this new version of TINU does also add a lot of under the hood changements to improve stability, reliability, and also modularity of the code and of the app works. So it is more easy to other people to help me with the TINU if they want to join me in the development. And also to take pieces of TINU code and use it for something else. Because I have also to say that the EFI partition mounter feature of TINU will also come as a standalone app, which I will release later.
Just so you know, I was a very good HyperCard programmer, so don't get too smart.
And I have also learned about all the macOS and iOS developing stuff. Just as I don't, before developing macOS, I have been an iOS developer, so I have experience about all the Apple's limitations on iOS.
Oh, that's useful. So for TINU, right now, I mean, just so people know, it works very much like other launcher or installer devices. You get a USB drive. You download a copy, a legit copy of the latest Mac OS, Mojave or High Sierra. And you said that it can be put anywhere in several places on your computer. It doesn't have to be in your application folder, correct?
Yes, and unlike other tools, it must not be named in some ways. The important thing is that you have the installer app in the root of a storage device or in an applications folder inside a storage device and storage devices, or your users folders like documents folders, downloads folders, or your desktop. And TINU is actually capable of finding. If TINU can't find it, there is also a button in TINU which will allow you to open an app in whatever place. Because I thought that that might be useful, and people will usually get quite annoyed if you don't give them this kind of freedom.
Sure. No, I understand that. So then it waits. It starts the process, which is really a terminal command, right?
Yes. Most people misunderstood how TINU works, but it's just stupidly simple. It's just an interface to let you use the command line method you use for every vanilla installer, but more simply. And also TINU makes sure that all the things you need for your Hackintosh installer are done right. For example, using the right partition table and format, making sure that the process will succeed by unmounting conflicting volumes and killing conflicting processes. And also TINU will analyze all the errors which may be produced inside the process, and it will let you know. And I have also, like other tools, I had a design class. I was helped by some really great designers, which are friends of mine, which give me a huge help to improve usability and understandability of TINU. And I am quite happy to say that with TINU you don't need any instructions or guides. What you will need this stuff for is maybe the Clover part,
right?
Unless you are not an expert.
So that's what was my next question. So I can hardly wait to test the new version of TINU. That's so. Tell me when it's done. Well, you'll tell all of us when it's done. And so you still have to run Clover, install a Clover bootloader to set up the installer, correct? The USB stick.
Yeah, yes, because to boot a non-Apple computer, you will need a bootloader, which is Clover, which is generically a bootloader. Is a piece of software which allows you to boot inside an operating system. In this case, we have Clover, which is some sort of an emulator which will emulate specific features of an Apple's BIOS and firmware to let macOS to work on a non-Apple machine. And also TINU for now to encourage people to learn about vanilla, but in future versions I will came out with a system to install Clover in a guided way through using TINU. But for now you have to install Clover manually. You can install it in different ways. For example, on UEFI systems, if you have an FI folders just ready, you just have to put it inside your FI partition of the USB installer and you are done with the Clover part. Of course, if you don't have any EFI folder, you can just run the Clover installer and create it, and then configure it. And I have to say, it have to be configured, all the FI folder stuff, all the stuff which is inside of it, it needs to be configured on purpose, specifically for your own system. You can't take it stuff from a generic guide or maybe another system and expect it to work just as well as a totally different system. Totally different system will need totally different configurations. But there are systems which of course will work just with the same on or very similar configurations.
So you have to do some research on that.
And also, talking about Clover drivers, you will have to do a whole selection of those based on the features of your PC or the characteristics mainly of your BIOS. And so this depends on your motherboard and the BIOS specifically. But there are some general drivers which are usually used. For example, one of those drivers which is more often used is FTO Memory Fix, which is a driver which allows Clover to correctly load in memory all the kernel stuff. And also some other drivers which may help, for example, support for various file systems or for Linux. You have all sorts of possibility and drivers you can use inside Clover drivers folder, and you have to really do it carefully and well for your specific system, because different, as I say, different systems will need different things.
And it's continually changes. I mean, we used to have to put in all sorts of video drivers into our Kext folder, and now we can use Lilu and whatever green, and it covers off a whole bunch of stuff that we don't have to do anymore. So it's a constant changing environment. It's too bad there isn't just one clearinghouse that will tell you, you know, what Kexts and 64-bit drivers that you might need for your particular motherboard. But even that changes over time, and it changes with each Macintosh update, and we talked about it already with Mojave version 1. We have to completely change the way we address USB port assignments. So we'll leave that till later. So again, with the vanilla, how does someone know what to, you know, what parts of the Clover bootloader, the 64-bit drivers they should have, and what Kext they should have also?
Yes, talking about Kext, there are some Kexts which are mandatory for each system, because without that Kext, it's just impossible to run macOS. For example, Kexts like Fake SMC. Fake SMC, talking more in details about it, is an emulator of a specific feature of the Apple firmware, which are some security keys which macOS will look for to allow for boot. In fact, in the old times, at the beginning of the Hackintoshing era, there wasn't any fake SMSC, so people could get macOS to boot until some point, but then macOS will just stop and not continuing to boot because of this missing driver. So fake SMC is necessary. There are also some alternatives which are there are around, like virtual SMC by the creator of Lilu. But I have to say that currently it doesn't work as reliably as fake SMC, and so if you want to use something, just use fake SMC. Then there are some drivers which everyone will need. First of all, your Ethernet driver, and there are mainly three kinds of Ethernet chips. You will need to choose an Ethernet driver based on the Ethernet chip you are using on your motherboard, or maybe also on an expansion card. There are also a lot of expansion cards compatible with macOS too. And for the motherboards, there are mainly three drivers you can use, because there are three main manufacturers of chips. So you have the Atheros family of Ethernet controllers, and there is the Atheros E2200 controller Kext you can use for that, including the Atheros Killer Lance series, which is used in a lot of gaming-oriented motherboards. And for Intel chips, there are several Kexts, but what works the best for the motherboard integrated chips is Intel Mouse Ethernet driver, which is also a great Ethernet Kext. And also for lower end and cheap motherboards and some OEM stuff, which may use the Realtek produced chips. There are a couple of Realtek Kexts, which are Realtek 8111 and Realtek 8100.
Yeah, so
I have to say that all these Kexts that I have mentioned are also developed by a great developer, which is Mieza. Mieza is also a woman, one of the best women we have in the Hackintosh community, and I want just to mention her and her amazing work, and also because she is a sustainer of our Vanilla and don't support Tony Mac stuff.
Well, I think it's important to encourage women to program. Not enough women out there doing it, so congratulations and keep up the good work. So I guess one of the things that people write to me about, and maybe they write to you about too, is that they'll go off and buy a cheap motherboard and then ask, how do I Hackintosh it? If they've got a recipe on a specific motherboard, you're going to be much better off getting the same motherboard and following that recipe, correct?
Yes, I have to say, here, our Italian Hackintoshers, we have a word for those people, because they are people which wants just the recipe ready and they don't want to lose time looking around for configurations. We call them the people who needs the papa pronta, which is the meal already cooked or something like that. They just want the meal done, but they are tired of staying in the kitchen and preparing it. But for the Vanilla, because there are so many variables, you have to spend at least some time in the kitchen configuring everything. And also I encourage always learning, because with learning you will get more powerful and more independent, and you can also make all sorts of things with your Hackintoshes. Like, for example, I know pretty well Hackintoshes, and now I have 6. So I have almost Hackintoshed everything. Maybe the only thing I have not Hackintoshed is my mom, but she's fine.
You know what? I'm sure she appreciates it. So just in terms of expanding your knowledge, I mean, my son makes fun of me because when I built my first one about 2.5 years ago, he said, well, you know, I just want to make it easy and do it quickly. And I followed, you know, a lot of the instructions out there. But he said, Dad, you're going to want to dive deep into it. And just recently, primarily because of Mojave version 1 and the USB changes, the port assignments, I found how to do it manually. And that I was creating the SSDT manually, and that was really cool, learning IO reg and stuff that I'm sure you know everything about. But wow, you know, the USB assignments were always a mystery, and I was never really sure what kind of bandwidth I was getting out of each of the ports. There were a couple of dead ports, in fact, just using the USB limiter DSDTs that you were always able to pick up. But by doing it myself and mapping it manually, number one, I now have a semi-permanent solution with each update. I don't have to worry about adding a different DSDT. And it's just, I have to say that the 3-4 hours that I spent, yeah, it can take a while, was quite thrilling. It was really neat. I mean, it's not real programming, but to learn how the Macintosh works and see all the other assignments in IO reg was very cool. By the way, while Pietro is trying to find stuff, I just want to point out my mug. This is in celebration of InSight landing on Mars. So good work, guys. Something I had nothing to do with, but Marvin the Martian for those of you who want the connection. So, yes, this will be now a permanent section of all our videos, as we're going to display the mug we're using for each of the episodes. Correct?
Yeah. Yes, this mug, I have to say, this is a gift of a friend. This is not available. Maybe if I become more of a famous YouTuber, I will start making money on all sorts of merchandising.
And merch is a very big deal. So let's get on with the questions. Give us a question. Question number 1 was, thank you. Looking forward to see some step-by-step guide to see the simplicity in action. So that was a common question, but I think we kind of answered that already, haven't we?
Yes, but because I want to avoid other people asking this, I want to give in the video a clear answer. And the answer is you don't really need a step-by-step guide with TINU.
Okay.
TINU is designed to be stupidly simple to use, and also for the trickier part, which is the Clover configuration, you will not need anything special for TINU. TINU is just like any other vanilla installer. It's just a way of getting the installer done. It is totally equal to creating it using the terminal. So you can just follow any terminal guide to get Clover on your USB installer and you will be fine.
The next question was, does this TINU allow you to use any motherboard, and will it create a SIM BIOS for that board?
TINU has nothing to do with the hardware, at least at this point. Some motherboards are more simple to install macOS on it, and others are more trickier. And I've also addressed the hardware question in some way.
Yeah, a lot of people will buy some inexpensive or used CPU, but you should always go on to everymac.com and find out which specific CPUs Apple has used. Although in the case of the X370 and the X390 boards,
you have more likely to match the architecture, or the CPU family.
Apple is not using the 8700K, right?
Yes, but the interesting thing is that Intel is just rebranding CPUs. So they are just taking another CPUs, maybe making a couple of improvements and some minor changes, and then just publish it with another name.
Sure, I think Coffee Lake is just a Skylake, right?
Yes, Coffee Lake is just the improvement of the slightly improvement of Skylake.
And speaking of why they seem to be a little bit more anxious, I mean, obviously it brings up the question of AMD.
Yes, I have to answer to the AMD question because it is answered a lot. I have to say that AMD CPUs nowadays are great CPUs. They offer a very good value for the money you are spending. But the problem is that Apple apparently they don't know about value, or they have some very important and restrictive agreements with Intel. I don't know, but macOS does only support Intel CPUs out of the box. At least you don't spend a lot of time modding it using a custom kernel, which is quite difficult in the latest versions of macOS, and will also destroy some features and will not guarantee you stability and all the programs working. So that's why we don't use AMD processors, because it is way more tricky and it's not worth at the end of the day.
Now it doesn't mean that it can't be done, but we're trying to keep something that is already fairly complicated and make it a little bit easier. Okay, so let's go to another question here. So I'm a little confused here. Isn't UniBeast also vanilla?
Yes.
Good question.
Yes, I picked choose with this one to talk about the UniBeast question. Because UniBeast is advertised as vanilla, and in some sense it is, but it isn't the canonical vanilla I recommend. Because for some people, vanilla Hackintoshing means just using the vanilla macOS, what Apple provides you. But for me, means doing everything on purpose for your hardware, doing everything well originally, and not using complicated methods, using just the original Apple methods, not modifying the system, and also using all open and legal stuff. Because one of the things that Tony Mac with his tool does is to hide some things, use some unauthorized software, or do some hidden tricks which we don't know. You are disencouraging people from knowing something like what you are doing to your computer, or what are you putting inside your disk, and all sorts of stuff. You will just not know nothing and have a lot of problems.
I think we'll get some interesting comments based on that comment. So let's and you said it's canonical, which means that your TINU has been blessed by the Pope. Is that true?
Well, I have to say, my family, we are fans of the Pope. I also personally know a lot of people living in the Vatican, because.
So obviously, of all the canonical installers, yours is going to be blessed by the Pope, which makes it the best. Well, I think that's a great way to finish this this presentation. And maybe we should think about putting together a Hackintosh convention, and you can be one of the keynote speakers. How's that?
Yeah, yes, I'm quite prepared with the keynotes.
Would you come to Toronto and we would set up this Hackintosh convention?
Yes, maybe if I can later some tickets for the airplane up here, I will be happy to be there.
We'll pay for it. So maybe we'll get some feedback down in the comment section as to whether people want a Hackintosh convention. Listen, maybe the Pope needs a Hackintosh. Anyway, so long everyone. Bye-bye. Bye, Pietro.
Bye.